So with that, I need a motion. We have Ms. Relaford on the phone, so I need a motion to allow her to join via phone. Phil first, Junior second. So with that, all in favor with the sign of aye?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed with the sign of nay? Okay, that motion carries. So Ms. Relaford, welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
All right. So the next item that we have is the approval of the minutes from July 29, 2020. I have a motion for that. Sharon is the first, and Jennifer is a second. With that on the table, any questions, revisions, comments that we'd like to put into the minutes? All right. With that, we will go ahead with no comments or questions. I'll ask for an approval. All in favor with the sign of aye? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed with a nay? Okay, that passes unanimously. So now we will move into the informational items section, and we'll walk through our normal monthly reports. Welcome, Mr. Fennell. So the first report that we have in our packet is from the county auditor, and so it's the regular report of the payouts and the checks issued over the past month, from a month of July. So that data is there in front of us, so we can see that. And there is a summary report that our auditors provided. So I guess I would ask, does anyone have any questions on the material from the auditor? And then I would like to ask is, Jessica, would you have any additional comments you'd like to share to support any other additions on the auditor's report?
Hello? Can you hear?
Good.
Okay, cool. The only other thing I have, I believe the last county board meeting, we were talking about the procurement card process, and the information related to that process of approval. I have some information, and we do have some guidelines for the county around the procurement card process. So if anyone has any questions or anything about the procurement card process that was included in the external audit, please come see me, stop by my office, come sit down if you want to have any other information about how that goes.
Okay, I appreciate that offer, and I do owe you a follow-up on that, and some additional from my position, so I'll set some time with you and we'll have a little bit more discussion to make sure we're 100% clear, but I'll take that as an action on my own.
Okay.
And if anyone else has any questions for the auditor on that, feel free to reach out to her on the procurement card side of it. With that, any other questions on the auditor's report or anything with the auditor's office before we move to the next topic?
Mr. Chairman, I recall the conversation being about checks and balances. Is this something you're handling yourself and we're supposed to be good with that? Is that how you're handling this?
Good question. So the finding that was brought forward by the external auditor was on expense reporting. We need the submitter of the expense report, and we need an official approver of that. And the situation we have is with the elected offices and the elected officers, they do not have a direct line for approval, as to meaning somebody directly above them because they work for the public, for the people. So that process needs to have some robustness added to it to have an approver assigned and a process to have a direct approver approve the expense reports of the elected officials. So those elected officials in the room, that's really the finding that they came up with. It's not one particular elected official, it's in general, we need to have a clean process on how those are approved.
And if I can,
I want to ask Mr. chairman if he has additional recommendations or questions around that.
So, do we have a process now that is equal for all the officials and users that are in that elected class, or are you telling me you're developing one?
We have a process, but the process today it's not clear as to who the approver is and the approval for those expense books of elected officials. So that's the piece that I'd like to sit with our auditor and look at the official process that we have in writing. She and I have had a few emails back and forth, and it's really on me from a timing to understand, be more clear about what is the process today that's in writing, and what do we need to consider changing, and any changes that would make that a more robust process. I'd be more than welcoming to have others that want to weigh in. It's not that I need to do it myself.
Is it fair to say that the elected officials but one have all agreed to have somebody look at their submission prior to it being sent on to the treasurer's office to pay?
It's not fair to say that at this point because I have not had that conversation with all the elected officials. So I don't have that firsthand. So I'll need to reach out to the elected officials. Some of those are in the room here today. Reach out to follow what their current process is and align it with what the external auditor recommended.
Thank you.
Maybe I'm not clear, so please ask. Okay. Other questions from the committee on that topic? So again, just in brief, on any employee of the county who has the ability to use a procurement card, which is basically a credit card, and travel or expend the county's money on behalf of the county, those people obviously have the ability and are required to submit an expense report. And that expense report, via the submission by that employee is stating when they put the report in that the report is valid. Those expenses meet the requirements of our policies. Those expenses are very valid. They're actual expenses. They stand behind it as the submitter. Then the second level is we need an approver to approve that. So we've got a two-level approval. The submitter's submission and an approver. So at all the other levels within the county, it comes up through and there's a manager or a supervisor level over the submitter. So for example, if Mr. Sorrell has a staff member on his team that's submitting an expense report, that submitter submits it, and then if Mr. Sorrell is the approver, then he would be the one that would approve it, and then they're both held accountable for the accuracy of the expense book. With elected officials, the elected officials do not have a person above them by line of chain of command to prove it. So we need to have a process. Now, the auditor reviews books that come through as an auditing process, but that's not an expense book approval process. That's a different function within the county. So the auditor has the ability to audit expenses like any other things that the auditor has authority and a privilege to look at. But the auditor looking at other people's books is not approving. The people that the auditor would really approve would be their direct reports, or they're an approver for that. So again, it's kind of semantics, but we need to clean that up. There was no finding of fraud. There was no finding of misuse. It was more of a process cleanup. Hopefully that helps kind of clear up what the finding was and where we need to move. I'll let you, I don't want to get into other processes, so if
I
you
just wanted,
stick to this, we'll continue.
No, we're sticking to this. The issue, and that's why I said we can talk, because we do have a process. There is a process for elected officials, just like there is for department heads. We do have an approval process that's already in place. Proper management response wasn't had for the external audit before that report and the finding was submitted. But there is a process, and I submitted that to you via email, and that's why I just don't want any false information or preconceived notions given without the accuracy of all the information that was provided. So I want everyone to know that there is processes in place. There is approval processes, even for elected officials. Most elected officials, their deputy carries their procurement card and make the purchases on behalf of their offices, and then the elected official does the approving. So there are processes in place, and we do have on the county intranet site a procurement card policy and process. So that does exist.
Yeah,
But again, like I said, so we won't have to get into the weeds here with people don't know the accurate information. I can submit that in next month's report. I can also take the time to educate people on the process and what already currently exists.
Okay, and thanks for the offer. I guess my ask is, let's sit down and have a discussion.
Absolutely.
Educate me, and then next month we will clarify for the committee and all as to where we're at and what changes need to be made. So again, this was a finding from last month. It's on my docket to do, along with our auditor, to look at that, and I'll take the task to have that done. So we'll do that, and we'll report back. All right. Anything else on that before we move to the next topic? Okay. So the next informational report is the county clerk's office. Oh, there's Ms. Parker.
Hello.
So we have a report in our packet from the county clerk's office. It looks like there's a lot of good activity, so I'd ask Ms. Parker if she'd like to provide some additional commentary around that for us.
Really, everything is pretty much spelled out for you in the report. I really don't have anything to add other than we are keeping up with our projected totals. So if they continue the way they are, we should come out above our projected totals at the end of the year. So we just hope that this keeps going in the direction that it's going with everything that's going on.
Okay. No, that's great news that the business of licenses and marriage licenses and various things are still continue along during the crisis. So that's a positive for all of us. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll move and ask, I guess, the committee. As a committee, do you have any other questions for our county clerk? Hearing none, I thank you for your report. So we'll move to the next item, which will be the County Election Commission, and Mr. Bride's got all kinds of activity on the works, so we'll let him share his thoughts, and I see he's got the vote mask, so he's carrying the message for all of us.
Yeah, just a little bit of an update where we're at. We mailed out about 70,000 vote-by-mail applications at the end of July. We've received back probably between 20 and 21,000 of those applications back. Probably 25% of those were online. The rest of them were either the mailing we did, or there's a couple other mailings that were done by different groups. We've got a number of duplicates, but we've got a pretty solid number between 20 and 21,000 at the moment returned. That's probably a little lower than we were expecting based on the mailing. I think there's been some concern because of news in the press with the United States Postal Service. We've got some feedback on voters' concerns about vote-by-mail dealing with that, which leads into one of the things that we...
Mr. Chairman, would you ask Tom to back up the two numbers he gave? I was drifting here.
Okay.
Sure, and I'll take the mask. That might help a little bit.
It was my ADD, just the two numbers.
We mailed out right under 70,000 vote-by-mail applications, and we've received, I don't have an exact number, it's between 20 and 21,000 back. Not all of those are ones we mailed out. We had about 5,000, a little over 5,000 were requested online, but we got back a significant number of those vote-by-mail applications. So the first ballots will go out September 24th, and I expect that number to continue to grow. We got a significant number in again today.
Could you maybe compare to past major election cycles on absentee vote as to how does that 21,000 number compare to historical?
Sure. The most we've ever mailed is right at 10,000. That was 2 years ago in November of 2018. We spent out about 6,500 in the last presidential election, so we're up significantly. We expect to be up significantly. I've seen some surveys in Illinois where, and it's a statewide survey, and I think we'll probably be below this, but 64% of the people were either likely or somewhat likely to request a vote-by-mail application. I think we'll be higher than jurisdictions around us, but I don't know that we'll get to where Cook County and some of the suburbs are. But I do expect that number to continue to grow. One of the things that we're starting to talk about, we did a Facebook thing on, we're going to have a drop box at our office for people who are concerned about mailing their ballots back, and we're going to have mobile drop boxes at all our early voting locations. I know there's a lot of interest in it. We had just under 300 shares on that Facebook page, and we reached about 24,000 people with that post, which typically we get like 3 shares, and my family that looks at it. So we're really, we know we're getting a lot of conversations, and the conversations we're having with people with concern is that Dropbox. So we're going to do some more discussion about the Dropbox. We're going to have it installed in our office, and we hope to have a press event where we do a ribbon cutting and everything to try to promote it, so people have, if they feel uncomfortable with the post office and mailing it, that they know they've got a second way to do it. We're also implementing, it's not up yet, but we will have it probably in the next couple weeks. You'll have the ability to track your ballot. So you could get on our website, enter your information, and you'll get either an email, a text, or a phone call saying, hey, your ballot's been mailed, or your ballot came back, or it's in the process. And so the voters can, on their own, track their ballots. We're hoping that should help us some in the office, but it also allows the voter to have some control over the process, since this is new for a lot of people.
Now, the staffing to provide those responses, does that come out of your team, or is that a service that you're providing through a contractor?
The ballot tracking is a vendor that we've contracted with to provide that service. We're basically giving them a data file once a day on who's been sent a ballot and what's come back. And honestly, they're not getting anything that isn't public data anyway. I mean, everything that they're getting it just allows the voter to sign up, and then those updates as they go along. The mailing going out will actually have an intelligent barcode, the intelligent mail barcode on it. The ones coming back don't. That gets a little trickier. We hope to do that in the future, but at least the ones going out is actually even going to have the intelligent mail barcode on it.
Okay. Additional questions? Sharon, I see your hand up first.
So do you have any concern at all that we've hired a contractor out of Arizona? So this stuff is actually, am I correct in assuming that it's coming from Arizona? So it'll be mailed from Arizona?
Yeah, the original mailing, the large, what we anticipate to be the largest mailing is the vendor that we've hired to do the printing, the assembling, and the mailing is in Phoenix, Arizona, the company by the name of Runbeck, and I don't have any concerns about it. They're probably, they're the gold standard in handling mail. It's not like this is anything new for them. They've been doing this for a number of years for a lot of jurisdictions. The big jurisdictions and smaller jurisdictions, they have a very secure facility. We only had 3 vendors that were capable of doing it, and one of them actually dropped out before we actually finished up our RFP because of they didn't have the capacity to do it. I'm actually very happy that we started the process when we did, because I don't think we could find a vendor now just because of capacity. So I'm very comfortable with them. They've got an incredible, they've been doing this for a long time. They've got an incredible reputation for this kind of service. And they have, we've walked through the process. Their process is pretty airtight. I mean, they understand they can't send the wrong ballot to anybody, so I'm not worried about that.
Any additional questions, Ms. Williams? Sharon? Okay. Jennifer, you had your hand up?
I have two questions. As far as the drop boxes go, those will be secured to the ground and have a camera placed on them, is that right?
The one that's at our location will be secured to the ground on a concrete pad, and the camera's actually already been installed. The ones in the early voting locations are smaller ones, and they'll be with the judges. We wanted at least one permanent 24 hours a day, but when you run into security, we're required to have that camera on it, or at least it's a heavy recommendation from the state. But our idea was to try to get some other locations throughout the county that people could drop it off, so we came up with the smaller ones at the early voting locations. We have judges there, it'll be with them, they'll come back each night. But it does allow somebody in Chillicothe not to have to drive to Peoria, or in Brimfield to have a drop box, at least on those early voting locations. So those are actually smaller mobile ones that you can carry. The big one, though, will be bolted to the ground, protected by concrete, and then we have a camera already on it. Yes.
My other question is, just because I've heard from a few people about their concerns with having received an application for somebody who doesn't live there anymore. Concerns about fraud. I've tried to explain the signature verification process. Can you run through that process real quick?
Sure, and one of the issues with the applications that we're seeing is that we send them out, and the ones we send out come back to us if they're undeliverable, but they're getting them from multiple entities. There's at least 2 large groups that are also mailing out vote-by-mail applications, and they may not necessarily be working off the same list or have a deliverable or undeliverable one to them. But even if it is, when they come back, the signature is verified by the application, and then when we send out the ballot, the ballot coming back is also verified on the signature. And in that case, it's 3 judges, not just the staff looking at the signature. And we get this question, even if you get 2 or 3 applications and you send them all back in, we're the only ones sending out ballots, and you're only going to get 1 ballot. Part of the reason that number, that 20 to 21,000, that I don't know exactly what it is, because we've got a number in the office, but I know a lot of those are probably duplications, or at least some of them are. We've already probably had 2,500 second applications for somebody already.
Yeah. Any other questions? Mr. Rand, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What do you think we can do through your committee to assist in the storytelling that needs to go on about our confidence in the reliability of local elections, or the election, let's just say? It really, I don't know that it's the Election Commission's responsibility, because if it is, they're not really getting the message out. And as any person, banks don't have deposit boxes, outside their building. You throw the envelope in and it goes inside their building. I don't know what your box looks like, but it doesn't sound real secure to me if it's outside. The confidence the public has in this whole mail scenario is national story every day, local story, state story. I think we need to help explain what the process is here better than we are. Because, I think the world of Tom when he's absolutely confident in something. My dad was a CPA. There's a level of confidence assigned to everything, including engineering. So the room for even 1 or 2 fake events that cast aspersion on the entire process. I mean, how many events or double mailings to an address, or how much of that has to happen before people start to lose confidence in that system? And maybe I'm postulating to you as somebody who represents the 4th District, which I do, but not everybody is really in agreement that this is the sturdiest approach as we go forward. Much of that has to do with political distrust and the fracture, in most areas of government, local, state, and federal. So I ask that of you as chairman of the committee. What do you think?
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because I've had very similar thoughts, and I think you articulated well of to create doubt in the voter's mind is pretty easy from a standpoint of you hear one or two comments about ballot applications being sent to addresses that are wrong, whatever. So it's easy to get people concerned. So I don't have the magic answer. I do think it would be good for us as a county to put some communication out, even if it's to get onto some news. I don't know if we can get our communications group to try to get us onto some morning news broadcast, and if we get Mr. Bright or whoever appropriate to talk about the safety and security in the processes, articulate that. We can do some through social networks. I know the county has. So I think that's a good ask. Maybe Mr. Sorrell, we can have a discussion about how we as the county, as an entity, could help get the good message out, meaning confidence, put the facts, and positively address the concerns that people have. Because, again, there's concerns on both extremes from a political standpoint. The mail service is incredible versus someone's going to harvest your ballot and everything in between. So the best thing we could ask people to do is shut their darn TVs off and quit watching the news, but I'm not sure we can accomplish that. So, but I appreciate your bringing that forward. I'll ask Scott to help put together maybe a communication plan with Gretchen and the communication team. Anyone from the committee have, or Mr. Bright, have any additional things you'd like to add around communications of that to the public? I'll start with Mr. Bright. Anything additional you would like to maybe promote or?
No, and we do have some plans for some educational components. We're slowly rolling those out. There's certain things we're trying to talk about now, as opposed to as we start to send ballots out. So we do have some of that, but we can only do so much reaching out. The more people that are communicating, factual information about elections, the better we are. I mean, one of the issues we deal with constantly is we get registered voters calling in and they're, well, I heard this, and we've got the calls. So you can't vote on election day in polling places or all these kind of issues, and we're trying to correct those as we go along, but our reach is only so much.
Yeah, I think clearing, that's a perfect question. I've heard that from other people, and I had that concern myself, is if I ask for a ballot to be mailed to me, and then I decide, you know what, I like going to vote. So to me, I look forward to waking up on election day and showing up at 6 a.m. when they open to go in and do my thing and put my sticker on. So for me, I'm not going to order an absent ballot, but I thought, what if I do? Can I take it in and go, I didn't turn it in, can I vote at my precinct?
Yeah, and we're getting a lot of those. We're getting those type of questions. What we're going to tell you is that, yeah, if you surrender the ballot on election day, that's fine. If you don't surrender it, there's going to be an extra step involved, but you still can't. We are also, though, trying to explain to people that we don't want the message to be out there is to order one as a backup and then decide later down the road. I saw a report from a clerk in Illinois earlier that was telling people, put it on your fridge. Put the application on your fridge. If you decide down the road you want to do it, then you can mail it in. I mean, we're not mailing ballots for over a month. We're right at about a month before we even mail ballots. And maybe by then you'll have a better idea. Because there's a significant cost that goes into creating that ballot and mailing it out. And then you can also end up with the confusion on election day. We're going to be, we have the capability on election day to handle all those processes, but all that's going to slow down that person behind you. And one of the concerns we still have on election day is because we assume we're still going to be doing social distancing and those kind of things, is that we're going to have lines on election day, and maybe possibly long lines on election day, just because if you do the math, you put 50 people in line at 6 feet apart, it's a football field. Mm-hmm. We don't have polling places. We have only a handful of polling places that you can have a football field length line and still be inside. So those are concerns we've got too. And we're trying to get that message out. But if you just decide, you can, until you vote that ballot and turn it in, you can switch.
Okay. All right. Well, any other questions from any of the other committee members? All right, I think we've got an action, Mr. Sorrell, that we can look at doing improved communications and get that out to the public. Oh, Phil?
Question about polling places. Are you getting larger?
Phil, would you use the mic so the people online can hear us?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I was going to ask Tom, now, polling places, and I visualize this, we could have bad weather, That's why you should vote early and vote by ballot. Because the weather's going to change in Illinois. Are you looking for larger areas where people would not have to stand out in inclement weather? Since you're expecting a larger amount of people to vote by mail.
What we have now is that our plans, at least today, are not to move polling places, because we get into a situation that if we move polling places, we have a number of voters on election day that won't be communicated, and they'll go to their old polling place, and we get concerned about people getting disenfranchised because they go to the wrong location. But we also are going to be reaching out specifically to our polling places that are private entities, to make sure, and we're going to, that plan is to kick in roughly next week, to start to reach out to them and talk to them about, look, this is what we're looking at. These are going to be our procedures, and we really need a drop dead answer at some point in September that yes, we're going to be able to use your location November 3rd, understanding that that's still over a month away from where that decision may come in. But we really need a firm answer. And if they're not comfortable with it, then at that point, it still gives us over a month before the election to reach out to those voters that may be affected. One of the things that the bill that was passed by legislature did was it closed the schools. And we didn't want to reach out to the schools the first week they were back, but I have talked to one of the schools. But we may end up having to move some of those voters into schools, which do give us much larger facilities and geographically spread out. So we have a secondary plan where the locations that aren't public facilities end up getting moved, depending on where they're at, to a specific school, and use that school as a polling place. And our hope is that if we have to do that, we're doing that the 1st of October, a month out, which still allows the voter to communicate with the voter their polling place has been moved, or maybe they still want to vote early, or they've still got time at that point to request a vote by mail ballot, and that all the options are still there, and we've communicated with primarily the private entities tend to be churches, and find out how they want to handle it, or if they're comfortable with the people being there for a polling place.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions from the committee? All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Bride. Thanks for the update. And as always, it'll be a good topic for the next few months. So appreciate you working that for us.
Thank you.
We will move into the next informational item, which is finance with Mr. Bruner. And I'm sure he'll have a lot of great information. So Randy, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Can you hear me? Is this on? Okay, thanks.
Yep.
The 2021 budget requests are in. Scott, Julie, and myself have started some of the budget hearings already. If you haven't had a budget hearing, you should have one scheduled. If you haven't been scheduled one, reach out to either Scott or myself. We'll work on getting you in the queue. Other than that, working with Brian Gully in the health department, we got some federal money applications for COVID that we got to start putting together. So he's kind of the lead on that. Other than that, that's all that's going on. And Kim's back. I'm so happy Kim's back.
Awesome. All right. Any questions for Mr. Bruner and the finance topic? I know it's a lively topic. We always like to talk numbers, right? Or am I the only one? Anyway, and Mr. Rand likes his numbers. All right. Well, thank you, Randy, for the update.
It's hard to go before Beth, so she's so excited.
No, we generally will build up to Beth. Tom kind of stole the thunder, so Beth can carry it back, and then we'll pass it on to Mr. Ryan here soon. So, Beth, you're on board here for the Regional Office of Education.
Not today.
Not
Not a
today.
guess. We had our audit entrance conference today, and the OAG called in. I just want to let the committee know we have brand new auditors after 5 years with the old firm. They've never done a regional office of education before. So, and we have a new financial system. No big deal. So we're gearing up for that. They'll be back in our office here in about a month. We haven't had any denials of the grants that we've applied for, and as a matter of fact, we have a new opportunity. We're partnering with Unity Point to write a Systems of Care grant. Why is that a big deal? We need to work on mental health supports for kids so that there's no wrong door. Whether you come through DCFS, foster care, whether you come through school, no matter what the door you come in through, there is no wrong door. So we were invited to write for this grant. They're going to pick 5 of the 10 applicants. So we've got a big team working on that. Status on your schools. Oh, this might actually make me emotional. It is so hard. You have no idea. None. PPS is full remote. To the north, they're getting some decent participation. To the south, it's a challenge. Dunlap is full in. The rest of the county is in some kind of hybrid. You have COVID cases in almost every school. Adults, children. Monica has been unbelievable. She was on an hour-and-a-half call, and her time is precious right now. We all know that. She was with them for an hour and a half. 40% of kids are asymptomatic. So the only reason we even know that they have COVID is because somebody else is positive, and because of contact tracing, we're finding them. So you got 40% of kids running around with absolutely nothing wrong with them. And then you have the different responses of your different boards, your school boards that are elected. You have your different responses of the adults. And so you've got a lot of different things going on out there, and that's adding to the complication. And I wanted to make sure you all understood that, because that's the consequence of local control.
Yep.
Local control is great when you need it, but when you need consistency, local control.
No.
I can't tell you the number of calls I've taken from angry parents who want something done about that school board. And I tell them, well, you elected them. And but that is the power and the strength of local control, but also the consequence. So I just seriously cannot thank Monica enough, because she has been available by phone at any time, including all of our calls have included Paul Thompson from Concordia. Peoria Christian is on the call, and we're really working to try to get the diocese involved. Peoria Regional, our school is off to a great start. We're doing a hybrid model. It has been fantastic, one of our best starts ever. And I'll end on a positive note. I really do try to always be positive, but it's just so hard right now. Before Meredith Bunch left Midstate, she had made an arrangement for us to get some of their equipment and science supplies and whatnot. And then when the bank swooped in, it got a little difficult. Well, the new company, the Blood and Clotting Disorder Clinic that's taking that over, they honored that agreement, and they let us come out the day before they had their big sale and take the stuff that we had earmarked. And it took us to a whole other level. Real science tables, beakers, hot plates, all this new stuff, except one of the kids walked in and said, this place looks like a hospital now. And I'm like, okay, that's just because nice new furniture. So it's super cool. But I'm not even sure what all you want to know about it. Right now, to try to get into a school to talk about anything besides COVID response and symptomatic children is complicated. Because if a child shows up, so if you hear this in the community, if you show up with a symptom from your allergies, you have an upset tummy, you're going home, and so are all your siblings. And that is very challenging to working families and to everyone, because that includes the staff. And so I had to send a teacher home yesterday. And when schools become the focal point of all that is wrong and right with American families and the economy, and then when we get put in a situation like this and people are relying on us for childcare and everything else, I know how to teach your kid how to read and do math. And so we're in a really interesting position, and this could last for indefinitely, we don't know. But the symptoms and when we send kids home has really been a challenge as well. So, but you got to go through it,
Yeah.
right? You can't go around it. You can't go. We will get through it. We're doing the very, very best we can. And Monica was very complimentary of the superintendents in Peoria County and how well they're communicating with the principals, and everyone's kind of got a rhythm. She's assigned staff members to school districts. So there are like 2 people in the health department, contact tracers, that are just for Limestone Walters or just for Dunlap. So that's where we're at.
Well, and you're embarking upon a journey that's none of us in this lifetime have encountered. And so I'd assume as an educator, you always look at, well, there's a book, there's a document, there's history. We can track and we can follow a plan. You're creating a plan every day, or the plan's creating you maybe every day. So, and don't have any good words of advice, but thank you for what you're doing. And
Well, Dr. Brookhart called last week, and I said, Jerry, you didn't tell me about this part. So that was fun.
he probably didn't see it coming either.
No.
Any questions for Jennifer?
First of all, I got your reference. We're going on a bear hunt. But I wanted to ask, because I've heard from some folks in other counties, how do you feel the direction from ISB and DPH is as far as when to draw that line to close schools? I've heard that has kind of been blurry thus far. Has that been your impression as well?
It has been, and one of the challenges, thank God we're a single county regional office with a single county Peoria City County Health Department, because there are regional offices that are 8 counties and the districts that cross county health department lines. And I have heard the expertise that Monica brings to the table and the way she has guided the ship of our local school districts has been very different than what some other counties have experienced. She has been very clear with our superintendents of when she will assert some type of authority or not. She will provide guidance as their cases start to increase, and then the local school district needs to make that determination as to whether they will close a classroom, a school, or a district. So she'll provide the guidance, they'll make the decision, unless it gets way out of hand, like 20% of the student population, et cetera. But she has shared with them what could happen as a region, where we're at as a region, or where we're at as a county, if all of a sudden we would all have to go full remote. But she has explained that to them in detail of when that could happen. But we have some districts, and you know this, with flags in the ground, they're not going remote, more than likely unless forced.
Mr. Rand?
Could we just all give her a big air hug since we can't give her a hug? So,
Absolutely.
I cry every day. I just didn't think it would be here. I thought I had myself like totally good and under
I wanted
control.
to come over and hug you and then realized I couldn't.
No, I absolutely thank you. Seriously, this is a challenge, and a roadmap doesn't exist. So it's different not every day, probably every minute, as to where you need to be and what. So, and being a former school board member, I appreciate your comments about the local control, but the local doesn't have any continuity. So you're trying to manage all these people that have local control and give them some continuity, and bless you for that. That's all I can say.
The hugs need to go to the kiddos because they're losing, sports seasons and all of that kind of stuff. And so they need a lot of our support right now.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We will move on to the next exciting topic, Supervisor of Assessments and Taxes. We used to think taxes were the most exciting topic in this committee, but maybe Dave will bring that back to us.
No, unfortunately I will not. We do have some good news, though. Our notices are at the mailers, so they'll be out a little bit earlier than I anticipated. They are going to be published in the newspaper on September 2nd, and I think one newspaper, Weekly Post, will have it on September 3rd. So the Board of Review filing deadline will be October 9th. So that's only about, I think, 10 days later than last year. And considering everything, that's pretty good. So kudos to our staff on getting that out, and the local township assessors aren't getting their work done. So I appreciate that. What we're seeing overall is similar to what we've seen in the past years, is most every township is either flat or going down in their assessments. I think the only township that's receiving a positive equalization factor is Elmwood Township. They'll get about a 2% increase in their residential, and all commercial industrial properties are going down a little bit. And that is not reflective of what's occurring in 2020. This is for years 19, 18, and 17. So we'll deal with that next year, how we're going to deal with commercial property. That'll be, I'm sure that'll be an issue, and it might be an issue at the board review this year also. So we will look into that. And I guess to put a human touch on it, probably take from Beth a little bit. I did get a text from one of my friends whose mom was wanting to come in to file for her senior freeze exemption, and she was real nervous about coming to file, and she didn't want to come in to do that because she gets help with that each year. And when we alerted her that what Peoria County did, and now the state has adopted statewide, is that you don't have to come in and refile for those this year, she said, I didn't realize how much stress my mom was under just because of that. And it brought her to tears regarding that. So that is a human thing, and that's what we're kind of looking for when we implemented that in March, and I'm glad the state went on. So that puts kind of a human touch onto what we're doing, and the disabled veterans, disabled persons, and the seniors that don't have to worry about this year because they're worrying about a lot of other things. That is kudos. So I did want to mention that, and if anybody's got any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Questions from the committee? All right, and as always, Dave, providing superior service to our taxpayers and folks has always been there from your organization. So kudos, and continue that support.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. We will move to the treasurer. We get back into numbers again. So Ms. Bjork, can share with us the treasurer's update.
And I apologize up front because I am going to throw a bunch of numbers at you. I just want to let you know what we're doing in our office and what we're accomplishing with a smaller staff than what we've had in the past. We sent out 83,373 bills. So far, the number of first installments paid is 76,917. So we have 5,647 first installments that remain unpaid at this point. And that is totally unpaid. That's not the half. That's totally unpaid. As far as second installment, we have 25,388 second installments already paid. I'm expecting any day now another 18,000 in escrow payments for the second installment. Of those remaining that are unpaid, 627 of those are trustee parcels. The trustee is holding their annual surplus sale right now, which this year is actually a sealed bid auction instead of in-person auction. We had actually planned this even before COVID, so it worked out very well. The sealed bids need to be turned into our office by August 28th, and then we'll be sending all of those to the trustee, and they will open the envelopes at that point and determine who is the successful bidder on those properties and get those properties back on the tax rolls. My office with 4 people have processed 2,352 batches in our software. Of those, 200 batches were processed by the city of Peoria. Last year, the city of Peoria processed 416, so they're less than half of what they did last year. So that leaves 2,152 batches processed by my office. 1,083 of those came from banks, either on paper, or we also have several banks that do electronically. We had 165 batches submitted by the township collectors. Of all those batches, there were 5,346 credit card payments / electronic checks that have been processed so far. That is compared to 6,821 for the entire season last year. And we haven't even hit second installment yet, so we are definitely going to surpass the credit cards and electronic checks. Our second installment due date is September 9th. It's coming up quickly. We are starting to see more people come in our office now, so on August 31st, we will be moving our office again to the old recorder's office to make us more socially distant. During all of this time, since about the beginning or middle of May, a little bit later than that, We assisted the finance department with daily tasks while one of their staff members was on extended leave. So that's what we've been doing in addition to distributions and ATM machines and banking and investments and everything else. So.
All right. Questions from the committee of Ms. Bjerke? A lot of numbers, a lot of details. Would you go back to the number of tax submissions from townships? Was that 156? Was that the number you?
165 batches.
165. Is that always, is that kind of what it's been at this point, or is that, it seems like a really small number for the number of township assessors or townships that we have that collect. Is that normal, or is this
Each year we're seeing those numbers decrease as far as the batch numbers. Because a lot of our banks collect for us, they're going to the banks instead of the township collectors. Or this year they just didn't want to go out, so they increased the mail and then the credit cards and electronic checks.
Okay. Mr. Fennell?
Yeah, your batches are a day, so you may have several people in that batch. Or what's a batch?
A batch depends. Our banks are a maximum of 50 payments.
Well, I meant for the township when you were talking township.
With the township, the maximum of 50 payments. So, but our escrow payments, I do one for CoreLogic. It's got usually about 15,000, 16,000 payments in it.
Okay. Any other questions for our treasurer? I know as she's very clearly stated, has a lot of activity going on in her small team of people, and we've got to be really appreciative of that because she's handling and managing the taxes, income of the taxes, distributions, a lot of load on that department. Not that others aren't, but that's really appreciative of the work that you're doing and your team. Anything else for the treasurer before we move on? All right, thank you. And we get the privilege of having Mr. Brooks here. Some people may not even recognize who he is. We haven't seen him for a while because Walk-In Wednesdays usually took over. So, Mr. Brooks, to present on the Veterans Assistance Commission.
I guess I should apologize too because I'm going to throw a bunch of numbers at you. But you kind of took my glory on the Walk-In Wednesday, so I canceled Walk-In Wednesday most likely for the rest of the year. So Walk-In Wednesday is the last Wednesday of the month, so we can save the day to claim. So the veteran, let's say if they come in this month, then their day to claim is saved as this month, so they get an extra month of pay. So that's why we do it the last Wednesday of the month. Usually we get about 30 to 50 people walking in. So we can't have that obviously during COVID-19. So for the safety of my staff and then the veterans themselves, we are going to cancel that the rest of the year. Just want to go through a couple numbers. The commission's been busy lately. They voted and approved on June 18th of this year salaries for our employees, and then the executive board just voted and approved the 2021 budget, which we will discuss tomorrow. Total money that we brought in so far in 2020 is $22,581,525. I guess 27 cents if you want to throw that in there. So this year we're on pace for just over 34 million total money brought in for veterans. Last year, which was record-breaking year, we brought just over 28 million. So we're, even with COVID-19 and the VA being pretty much closed for 3 months, we're a little over 6 million ahead of last year. So about every dollar we get in our budget, we bring in about $50. So the back pay money, which I like to call back pay money, is lump sum money. If the board, when I emailed you, lump sum money is, let's say the VA takes 5 to 6 years to decide to claim, and the Board of Veterans Appeals, they get back pay all the way to that, which I'm going to go over a couple right now, which I emailed you guys about. So we had, I had a couple of lump sum payments for veterans. One was $243,000. That went all the way back to 2014. So that was an Agent Orange case. That means he went through 2 denials, and that means I went in front of a judge virtually in Washington, D.C., and fought the case and won, and he went all the way back to 2014. And then another one, they're actually working on Board of Veterans Appeals cases, which is shocking. We had another one, 177,000 back pay all the way to 2012. Once again, that was an Agent Orange case as well. Trish had a death benefits one, just a little over 133,000 back pay. Our VSO Christina had one for 122,000, and then Mike, another VSO, had one over 56,000. So these are over the last 2 months. That's why our numbers are so high. Right now, we have 358 active claims waiting on decision, which is VA claims, and then we have 176 active appeals, which means they've been denied and then we appealed the decision. The Vietnam Traveling Memorial Wall will be in East Peoria on West Washington Street from September 23rd to September 27th. I have not got a flyer for that yet, but I have reached out to the contact. Once I get that, we're not going to do outreach or anything like there. They don't want anybody there doing outreach. Me and the Vet Center both reached out to do that, to talk to veterans, but with COVID-19, I think it's a better idea. I'll take any questions. That's all I've got.
All right, well, thank you. Questions from the committee for Mr. Brooks? A lot of good work, Phil.
Simple one.
Yes, sir.
Is this the Vietnam Wall that was brought here to Glen Oak Park years ago? Same one that Perot put together for us?
It should be the same one, yes.
Should be the same one,
Yeah.
okay.
So I saw him. I actually, because I have meetings in East Peoria, and I just happened to be driving by and saw him put the sign on. So I was Googling it while I was driving. But yeah, so I found it on the website. They are still coming. I don't know what precautions they're going to have, but actually my meeting will be in East Peoria since I'm the president of the state association. So we'll be there in East Peoria. My entire state association will be there right when the wall comes. So it'll be nice.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Mr. Brooks? There to support our veterans. All right. Thank you
guys
very much. Thanks for the update. All right, we will move into resolutions. We got 3 today. The first one is the monthly delinquent taxes. And I need a motion to put that on the floor. Mr. Fennell is the first, and Sharon Williams is the second. Any questions? We had a handful of them this time, or actually a good handful, but any questions on that before we move forward? All right. All in favor with the sign of aye?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed with the sign of nay? All right, passes unanimous. The next item is from our county clerk. It's a refund of raffle license fee. I need a motion. Phil first, Junior second. And I'd ask our clerk to give us a brief update of what this is.
We've just had a couple of associations come to us that have not been able to hold their events where they were doing the raffles and wanted a refund or wanted to know what they should do if they couldn't hold it. And so since the state statute does not allow us to extend that, we are coming to you to see if it is all right with you to refund those as we get them. We've only gotten 2 requests and they're both under $30. So we don't expect a lot to come through, but we wanted to know what to do with those that do come in.
Okay. And I think that's a fair ask for those organizations who did file, and we did process that. They were not able to run the raffles. I guess I would ask the committee, do you have any concerns or questions about this motion? All right. With that, all in favor with the sign of aye?
Aye.
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 Those opposed with the sign of nay? All right, passes unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Parker. And the last one is one that we talked about last August. We bring it back up. It's the provision for property assessed clean energy, or PACE, administrator services for Peoria County. So I need a motion to put this on the floor. Junior as the first, and Jennifer as the second. And I'm going to turn this over to Karen and have her give us an update on, and before I do, we did have this on last year's docket and we've moved it forward. It got sort of delayed with the COVID and the pandemic. So we did approve last year to proceed forward with the property assessed clean energy offer to businesses in our county. And so I'll ask Karen to give us a quick highlight of what the program is, and then the ask today on approving going forward with putting an administrator in to help run the program for us. So all yours, Karen.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me? Is this on? Okay.
I think it's on.
Okay. Good afternoon. Like Chairman said, this is for the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program for Peoria County. And I actually had a wonderful slideshow prepared for you today. Unfortunately, there's some technical glitches and we're not able to see that. So I just will highlight some of the things just to give some of our newer members and a little refresher of what PACE is. It's a voluntary energy conservation program that provides up to 100% financing for approved energy efficiency projects. And the PACE provides low-cost, long-term financing for energy efficiency projects. And some of those projects that have been identified are installing solar panels, HVAC improvements, roof repairs, updating insulation, and LED lighting. And there's a whole host of other things that are outlined in the PACE Act that was passed by the Illinois as Public Act 177. And that act does have details for governmental units to establish a PACE program by adopting a resolution ordinance. And with that, you show capital that is available through the program administrator. It describes the financing arrangements, the type of energy projects are allowed, and we've already defined that Peoria County will be the territory for the PACE program. And it also has very specific what the report for the proposed program. So in that, the PACE Act, this report is going to request that you have the assessment contract worked out, the application process, an explanation of the process of billing and collecting assessments, a plan to finance the program, what the program fees are, and the provisions for marketing and participation for the community. The requirements include that the term of the assessment does not exceed the useful life of the energy project, the appropriate ratio of the amount of the assessment to the value of the property, and also the written consent from the mortgage holder before participating. With the mortgage, with this assessment, it does take priority over mortgage, and that's why that's a requirement that the mortgage companies have to sign off on this. So that's part of the application process. Let's skip over that. So we are into the selection of program administrator. We sent out the RFP. We received 2 proposals. The Illinois Energy Conservation Authority, which is a not-for-profit, and also TruePace. Both of them are located in Illinois. We are recommending that the Illinois Energy Conservation Authority be the program administrator. And some of they both sent in complete proposals, but there was just some edging by the IECA. One of those things is the org chart that IECA is proposing that will be working on this highlights that they have the Inland Green Capital Group, Slipstream, Abacus, Inland Real Estate Group, and then a law firm. So they have a large contingent of people that are working on several different things, serving as program administrator, providing lead support for program implementation and marketing, providing capital, providing marketing and outreach. Abacus is doing underwriting and developing guidelines and training materials, and Inland Real Estate Group is providing IT, marketing, and real estate tax support. TruePace had a much leaner group of people, and it was all within one, just one company. So I felt they had an edge there. The other important item that
IECA has over its counterpart, TruePace. IECA has experience in the program setup, and they are the program administrator for DuPage, Kane, and McHenry counties. And I hear that Will County is also coming on board soon. So they also have experience nationally. They have a very robust group of training materials, presentations that were submitted within this proposal, and I feel that they are ready to hit the ground running. They've already got the roadmap for the Illinois requirements through the PACE Act, and also they have a website for online submissions for a pre-application in addition to their final application. They are doing the pre-application so that people are able to determine whether their project is eligible before going too far down the process. The other couple things that I found that were very important were that IECA operates as a not-for-profit. They only charge fees necessary to cover their expenses. They're flexible in design and structure of the final fee schedule, so what they have put in their proposal is something that, as we move forward through this process, I, along with a team of staff members, will get together and negotiate and determine what all of those fees and elements of the program will be put into the ordinance that will be coming forward for your approval. The proposal for fees is the application fee of $150, and that's a one-time credit or one-time cost, and it's something that they will put towards the final application at closing. The administrative fee is 1.75% of the total assessment amount. They do have a cap on that of $75,000, and they also have a minimum floor of $2,500. There is the last item that I find very important is that there is an optional fee for program maintenance, and that's for the opportunity for us to extend the group to bill, collect taxes and the payments and redistribute those to the capital providers. And this is something that I've talked to Madam Treasurer, as that she can ask questions when we do our negotiations, and she can make a determination whether that is something that we have the capability that we want to do internally, and also if there's a fee that she wants to assess in order to take care of some of that labor cost, we can put a fee on there, or if that's something that she wants to farm out to this company, and they will put a nominal fee on for that collection feature. So that's my big picture, and I will answer any questions, at least
All right.
attempt to.
Questions from the committee? Mr. Fennell?
Yes, you said 75,000 was the maximum on this, and is there any grant money, or is this just strictly a low-interest loan on these?
That's the purpose of PACE, is for the property owners to do energy efficiency projects and being able to put that over an extended amount of time. And so instead of having to pay it off within the 5 or 7 years over a loan, they can do it over the useful life of the program up to 20 years.
But I think the answer is that there's no grant money with it. It's just purely a lower interest and a longer duration loan for the applicant is another option over other sources of funding they may choose to use to do energy upgrades on their commercial. So just a couple things for clarity. This only applies to commercial properties, not residential properties. There were provisions. We did not choose to exercise the residential portion of this. We chose to look at the commercial portion. So it's commercial businesses, and it's really just another opportunity for them to find a source of funds that may be more attractive to them. And then the funds would be paid, their payments would be made through the tax submission on their property taxes. So that's where it ties into the property tax cycle in our treasurer's department. So we would have to process that through the treasurer's office. As Karen has talked about, this administrator does provide another option that they would process the funds for us, collect and distribute the funds back to the loaning organizations, but there's a fee and there's some details, so she's going to have Ms. Bjorky work with her and look at some of those provisions. So the proposal she has brought to us today is to get our approval for the county, Ms. Reithel and our treasurer and others, along with state's attorney, to review the opportunity here to do business and sign a contract with this administrator. There should not be any real cost to us to do this except the treasurer's cost, so there will be a burden on the treasurer's department if we elect to use the treasurer's department to collect and distribute funds through the tax cycle. So at this point, we're looking to give approval to go that next step to put an administrator in place. Any other questions from any of the committee members? Mr. Chairman?
What was the rationale just to begin with commercial parcels and not all parcels?
That's a good question. I remember we discussed that last year when we approved this. I'll ask Karen if you've got an answer to that.
It was going to be something that has already been put forward before. Residential is a little bit different of a beast. So if we wanted to go forward with the residential, it would have to be a separate program as well. They cannot be the same program.
So you really did make a choice then to exclude residential from this?
It wasn't an option at that time,
No.
I guess, is maybe I didn't clarify that properly.
Member Pastusha is keenly interested in the accessibility of this kind of a loan program for homeowners to be able to upgrade their physical plant to more green or stable, less carbon dioxide emission type systems. Does she know this is just going through on one leg of the stool then and not both?
Yes, I believe
Yeah.
that is
I
something
have
that she is aware
discussed
of.
that with Ms. Pastusha, because she and I have had a lot of conversations, and pretty comfortable. She is aware this is commercial only, but again, she's been a good champion for our county on finding positive sustainability things to
And
to
I
help.
thought it was, Pace was I thought that was it. I mean, I know I've met with him somewhere. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I
No,
get
that's
that out on the record, and Kate
good.
knows I asked about it.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? Otherwise, if not, I'm going to ask for a vote here, and we'll continue on. So all in favor of approval of moving forward to negotiate with this vendor to be an administrator, with the sign of aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed with the sign of nay? Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you, Karen. Keep us up to date on the progress, and if you have any questions along the way. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, miscellaneous. We've run long. I apologize, I've taken the next committee's time, but any miscellaneous that we want to put out here today?
Mr. Ricker, to your point earlier when asking about the flow of tax receipts from township collectors throughout the county, was the answer to your question that's a normal number to receive per cycle?
I guess the answer was it came across to me as normal. My perception is that seems pretty low. I know we have talked about this sometime in the past about efficiencies and the process of using township collectors. Yeah, I know there's some discussion, but again, mine was to understand what kind of volume's coming through township, so, you know, we have a good read on it at this point. And I'd ask maybe the treasurer to add any other commentary around that. You might turn the mic on, I don't know if.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Every year I prepare a spreadsheet for the county clerk's office so they can do bonds for the township collectors. So I see what happens over the last several years, and each year the number and the dollar volume go down. The biggest one that I've seen actually decrease actually happens to be the city of Peoria. They used to be in like $35 million a year collected. Last year I believe they were at 17 million. I don't know the explanation for it. All I know is that, you know, a lot of more people are doing online banking, or they're mailing, or they've got a bank that's right around the corner from them instead of having to drive all the way downtown. So the number is low. I think this year is an exceptional year just because of everything that's going on, but the numbers are definitely decreasing.
Any other questions?
Is that the only responsibility of the township collector?
Yes. And they only do it, except for the city of Peoria, they only do it through the first installment due date.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll make comments from mine, maybe aging me, but to me, it seems like an antiquated system of, you know, a little bit past horse and buggy time period, but the point of everybody knew their township collector in the neighborhood, and you took it to them. Today with electronic submissions, other means to transmit funds, that's an area that, to me, it just doesn't seem like it's a very efficient or effective way of using taxpayers' money to have another layer in there. And I'm probably venturing into an area that I'll probably get criticized, but I'm willing to put it on the table. It's an area that we should look at, not that we have authority, but that's an area that needs to be looked at in the future.
No, I'm happy to, and I bring it up expressly because the number of positions that may be impacted by a countywide referendum as to whether that position needs to exist, given the structure the county and other governments have for the collection of taxes. Unless there was another responsibility, it does seem to be a big job title for not a lot of work.
Yep.
Yeah, and each of those positions has to have a bond. And it used to be, when we were actually earning a lot of interest, that if the township collected interest, they had to turn it over to us, and then that interest portion got distributed back to all the districts within that township. We're getting, because they're not keeping the money very long, they turn it over to us usually by the end of June so that we can actually distribute the money. And because the numbers are going down, some of the interest is $10. So county, what we collect goes to all the districts within the county.
Okay.
I'll probably get put in the same canary cage with you too, but I'm happy to be there. Thank you, Steve.
All right. No, thank you. Any other miscellaneous for the good of the organization? If not, we'll adjourn. Thank you.